Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A sad topic today, but let's discuss. How did the kid from your school die? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Of all things, an unfortunate camping accident. This was before cell phones. Two friends went out for the weekend to a campground for some fishing over the weekend. When they didn't arrive home at the time they said they would, the parents called the provincial park to see if they were running a bit late. The weather wasn't great, and the camp was about an hour away from town, so it was entirely possible they decided to stay another night and drive out in the morning instead. The park warden stumbled upon their campsite and found both of them dead in their shared tent. Turns out it was a cool night, and they decided to run a small heater in the tent to be warm, but it was an old heater that didn't have a shutoff sensor built in. The heater ran all night while they were asleep, and since they didn't open the flaps on their tent for air circulation because they wanted to trap the heat, the tent filled with carbon monoxide and suffocated them in their sleep. So sad, and a week before school, too. Playing along a fast-moving creek deep in the woods, first teen gets pulled under really fast. Second one immediately runs and dives in to find him. A minute later, first teen comes back up on the other side exhausted but thankfully unhurt. Guy who went in to find him was not coming back up. Was in the days before cell phones, had to run a good mile back up the trail, hop in the car, drive to the nearby park ranger office, East Texas Big Thicket area, and report/get help along with guide rescuers. Took about 30 minutes total to get back out there to the accident. Still no sign of him. Rescue workers found that under the higher waters were tons of plant and tree debris everywhere. 2 days of removal, while still trying to control fast-moving waters, his body was finally found. He had dove too deep trying to find the first friend, getting trapped under the submerged branches, without enough energy or breath to fight against the current to get back out and back up. He was only 15. Grade school, rainy day. Bell rang, and little girl panicked about being late, ran out in front of a school bus. I saw it happen. Grade 5. He was playing with his little brother when they found their dad's duty pistol. Little brother shot him right between the eyes. Can't imagine how the little brother feels. It was about 50 years ago. Some of these were tough for me to read as a parent and just a human. So there's more to come. So enjoy. Group of kids got skunk drunk and decided to take a ride down a notoriously winding road. One guy was standing in the back of the truck and fell out as they rounded one of the hairpin curves. Didn't make it. Kidnapped, arred, and murdered by a serial pedophile killer nicknamed the Man with the Mask during school camp. We played together 3 days before. The killer had a spree over decades in different countries. Craziest part is, a soldier stationed close to the campsite saw the man and my friend in a car during a night run in the woods. Shortly after, the soldier was sent to Iraq. Years later, after he returned, he heard about the case and remembered that night and the car model he saw. This clue led to the arrest, trial, and sentence of a previous suspect. Just didn't wake up one morning. His mom found him dead in his bed. Turned out he had some condition they had no way of knowing about. Can't imagine anything worse as a parent. His girlfriend broke up with him. He didn't take it well. One afternoon after school, he walked down to the primary school near our high school and shot himself in the head right outside the entrance. Didn't know him well, but I don't think he had all that many friends. He always had sad eyes, but was very nice whenever someone spoke to him. There was one kid in elementary school who was riding his bike and got hit by a car. The school's infinite wisdom was to reiterate the dangers of not wearing your helmet while riding a bike. Fantastic memorial. There was the guy who drunk drove into a pole to avoid a squirrel, as the surviving passengers put it. But the hardest one to think about was my kindergarten classmate. She survived, but her baby sister was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing. Hit by a drunk driver while in a car with 4 people. Was ejected 30 feet from the back seat. Mans got up, walked to a burning car, actually ripped the door off, pulled out all 3 other people and dragged them 10 to 15 feet away, then collapsed. Succumbed to his injuries at the hospital later, apparently had a broken femur, collarbone, wrist, and arm, amongst other things. The other 3 only had minor injuries, and the car exploded like 3 to 5 minutes after he pulled them out. Dude was actually a hero.
Yes, that's the definition of a hero. Tragic and sad that he lost his life, but incredible that they did all of that with the injuries that they suffered. Hopefully he's still remembered in your town.
Like 5 of them died of drunk driving accidents, 3 of them at one time. Little redneck school in the middle of nowhere. Apparently, people seem to think drinking and driving is the only way to have fun. Self-inflicted shotgun to the head. She was mercilessly bullied throughout school. Junior year of high school, and it was too much. The school and diocese consistently turned blind eyes to bullying and other disciplinary complaints toward children from priority families. The priest had the audacity at the funeral to talk about the selfishness and sin of suicide. An electrician screwed up rewiring her family's house, so a live wire was touching a metal pipe connected to the bath. Her mom was wearing rubber work boots when she filled the bath, so it wasn't electrocuted, but she must have accidentally brushed against the tap or gone to add some more water while submerged and was killed instantly. We live in a very small town where everyone knows each other, so it really rocked our community. She was in the grade above me, so would have been around 10 to 11. She was in 5th grade and needed a blood transfusion. Her parents were Jehovah's Witnesses and refused the procedure. I don't know what condition she had, but she died due to a lack of medical care. Try making sense of that at 11 years old. Massachusetts, 1995. This one guy at my high school tried asking out this girl. The girl's brother and a group of his friends jumped him, did some unspeakable things to him, and the entire school found out about it. He was missing from school for months because he was in the hospital. Eventually, he came back to school, but people stared at him. It must have ate away at him because during the summer, his family went on a cruise and the guy jumped off the cruise ship and drowned. Wrestling team bully with anger management issues punched an elderly man in a road rage incident, and the elderly man shot him dead and was acquitted as it was deemed self-defense. In grade 11, a kid in my class died in a motorcycle accident. His cycle slipped, and he got hit head-on by a semi in front of his parents. He wasn't popular, though, so when it happened, it was just a quick announcement at the start of class, and then life moved on. Several weeks later, a popular kid was drinking and driving and was in a near-fatal accident of his causing. That was a week-long tragedy in the school. Even the effing teachers joined in. FCHSS. He was kidnapped in 1989, and his body wasn't found until 2016. His mother went on to start the Crimes Against Children Registration Act in 1993. 260Z wrapped around a tree 20 feet up in the air after running off an embankment going over 100 miles an hour. Front and rear bumpers on passenger side were touching. They used 2 tow trucks to get the car to slide down the tree. Needless to say, closed casket funeral. In high school, a girl in the year ahead went missing. There were flyers posted for volunteers to help search for her. It was understood that she wasn't the type to run away. Her mom was out of her mind with worry. A few weeks later, her stepfather was arrested. It seems he'd SA'd her, and then switched from her to her little sister. She threatened to tell, and he murdered her. Then he drove her body out somewhere to dump it, with her little sister in the car. She was too traumatized to remember much. Apparently, he put her body in a dumpster, and it ended up in a landfill somewhere. They got a confession out of the guy by putting him in Gen Pop and letting the other prisoners know what he was in for. He lasted less than 2 days. Her name was Debbie Moberg. Drinking in a car with 3 friends, and when the police came, they fled, driving at a high rate of speed. They missed the turn when the road made a T. There was a massive tree directly behind the double arrow sign, and they wrapped the car around it. To make the situation worse, the police arrived and refused help to the screaming teens until after they interrogated him. What? 3 of the boys died, and the 4th was in a body cast for 6 months and in rehabilitation for years with permanent disabilities. The parents sued the police for not helping the boys and allowing them to bleed out. The parents won, and the disabled boy has enough money to cover his care for the remainder of his life. The boys did break the law and were stupid, but for the police to tell them that they are going to allow them to die if they don't answer their questions, and then they died, was inexcusable on any level, and they should have been charged, not just fired. Yeah. She made fun of a Cholo, Latino gangbanger's nickname, and he shot her in the face. It was a stupid nickname, and she was a bitch to everyone constantly, but she was like 14 to 15, and she never got a chance to be better. A football player's heartbeat was slowing, and there wasn't a defibrillator nearby. Now, several years later, there's a defibrillator by the locker rooms and a plaque to remember him above it. One guy died on his birthday. He was getting chased by his friends for birthday beats. Nothing really bad, just a little roughhousing. So they're running around in the school all playfully, and he just collapsed and turned blue pretty quick. He apparently had some heart issue that he was unaware, and his heart just stopped. I believe he was like 15 or something. Super sad. In high school, a girl who sat next to me for more than 2 years, we were seated in alphabetical order, went to a party one weekend senior year, got drunk, and decided to walk home in the dark on nearby railroad tracks. Run over by a train, died. Her seat sat empty for the remainder of senior year, almost 40 years later, and I still remember her name and exactly what she looked like before the incident. A friend from high school died his freshman year of college at a fraternity hazing. The frat was already banned from having any events on campus, so the hazing ritual was done off campus at some house they rented off Airbnb. Guy was a good man, always nice to others, and had a great sense of humor. I don't think he had much experience with alcohol, because he turned blue after the hazing and was found unresponsive on a couch sometime later. His frat decided to quietly drop him off to the hospital and left him there all alone. He died about 4 days later in the hospital. He was hooked onto a bunch of machines and sadly didn't recover. The alcohol had done irreparable damage to his liver. His parents sued the university, but the courts ended up ruling in favor of the school. Aside from the legal battle, his parents lost their youngest child. That's never easy to process. Almost 7 years later, and I still think about him from time to time. I wanted to attend his funeral, which was on a Friday, but I had a final exam for my German class and couldn't reschedule it without rescheduling my summer break traveling plans. Yeah. I regret not attending the funeral. Yeah. It would have given some sort of closure, being with friends and having time to just be in each other's company.
As someone who went through a little bit of hazing in the military, usually around a promotion, I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, hazing should not exist." I mean, it's a thing. Should be more regulated at least, and maybe run by adults and not, drunk teenagers or early 20s. That being said, going to the funeral and a German exam and messing up your summer travel plans, just between you and me and anyone else listening, that sounded a little selfish, but, it was just his funeral. Hopefully you keep him in your thoughts from now on.
In high school, I had a friend that had a troubled family life. He was living with foster parents and ran away back to his family on the reserve. They were First Nations, Cree specifically. He got picked up by our equivalent of CPS and was being transported back to his foster family's house in town. While on the highway, he jumped out of the car while it was traveling at a low speed. He got hit by another car in the oncoming lane, going 100 kph. Looking back on it 20 years later, it is still painful. He was such a good guy. It breaks my heart to think of how much he missed his family and was willing to risk his life to go back to them, despite the abuse and drug use. He just didn't feel like he belonged in his foster family's house. They were decent people, just not his family. There was another kid I went to school with but barely knew. She had a few disabilities and health issues. She passed from some kind of heart condition, as far as I know. He froze to death in his sleep after passing out in the snow. It was a school trip with his class, and they had some beers, but probably some of the first few times they tried alcohol was devastating. They were moving from one house to another, and he had said he needed a break in between, but everyone forgot or just thought he's in another house. It sounds like an obvious mistake, but it's not necessarily that cold even if it's snow, especially after a drink. To lie down and chill on a snow pile with a good jacket is no problem, but if you pass out and forgotten, well, damn. Hung himself. I was really good friends with him since maybe 5th grade, but I knew him since kindergarten. We weren't talking that much for a bunch of 9th grade, but we really started talking again, and then he died. I was doing multiple school projects with him at the time, but I ended up not having to do them. I was told by my crying mom, and my dad was pretty much crying because of me having to deal with that. There were no clues, or did he ever say anything about his thoughts. Before that year started, though, his mom told my mom that he's been having bad anxiety, and maybe to not talk to him. He was happy to talk anyways. It was a big story, and there were people from schools away who knew about it. And the classes I was with him in were pretty much pure sadness and crying. The English class was the worst, though. I was crying with my head down on my desk, but the co-teacher in that class comforted me. I worked with her until I graduated last year. God bless her soul.